Deep divisions within the Conservative Party, an accusation of Project Fear. It's reported this morning that even Number 10 wants Labour to step up a gear. I'm joined now by the former Prime Minister, Gordon Brown. He's in North Queensferry. We'll hear from Mr Brown in just a moment. But first, let's have a look at a clip from the video he made this week stating the positive case for remaining in Europe.
And we shouldn't just be a member of the European Union. We should be a leader of the European Union. Soon we will be the strongest economy in Europe. The smaller nations look to us for leadership. And what message would we send to the rest of the world if we, the British people, the most internationally minded of all, were to walk away from our nearest neighbours? We should be leading in Europe and not leaving it.
Well, now, very good morning to you, Mr Brown. And this issue of how hard the current Labour leadership are campaigning. Shadow Chancellor John McDonnell saying today Labour's voice has been squeezed out of the media because of the punch-up in the Conservative Party. Do you agree?
I think that's true. The focus of the media has been on what they call a blue versus blue, Conservatives fighting Conservatives. But, you know, there's only 10 days to go. The people of this country realise this is an important decision. They want to know both the fears and the worries about leaving, but they also want to know the positive reasons for staying. And what I tried to do in that video is to show that Britain has always done best in Europe when it's been a leader. We led Britain led the Europe out of war. We shaped the Convention of Human Rights. We helped Eastern Europe escape from Soviet totalitarianism. We led the single market, which is responsible for millions of jobs. And now I think we've got to set out the agenda for the future, how we're going to lead in the future, in jobs, higher standards of living, fairness in taxation, security against terrorism, all these issues. And I think in the next 10 days, the motto should be of at least the Labour campaigners, not to leave the European Union, but to lead it and to show how we will do it to make people's lives better off.
So you want a much more positive vision of UK membership of the European Union. Are you talking about sitting in a triumvirate there with the French and the Germans?
What I'm saying is that Labour has been trying to get this positive message across. It's time now for us to step our efforts up in the next 10 days. I think the agenda that I'm going to outline tomorrow in a speech will be one that European leaders can support as well. I hope the Conservative government can support the agenda. But people need to know where are the jobs going to come from, how Europe can contribute, how the standards of living are going to improve. Fuel bills, for example, can come down. They want to know how Europe can help get fairness in taxation and how we can be more secure. And there are detailed proposals that we have as a Labour Party, and I've been talking to Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell, their teams about this, and at the same time Tom Watson, the Deputy Leader. And I think Labour can show over the next 10 days, particularly to Labour voters, they don't like the status quo. They want to know how things are going to change to the benefit of them and their communities for the future. And once we set out this agenda, I think you will see Labour voters far more enthusiastic about the vote to remain. They want us to lead and not to leave.
But aren't you worried that some Labour voters will see this as an opportunity, given what we've discussed about the blue on blue, as an opportunity to give Mr Cameron a bloody nose?
And it's precisely for that reason that I think we've got to show people the benefits, the positive benefits, and that you're not voting simply for the status quo, you're not voting for, if you like, insecurity. You're not voting for a future where your jobs are at risk. You're voting for a future where we can make jobs more secure. We can create more jobs by changing the single market in Europe. We can actually improve people's quality of life. We can improve workers' rights. Now, historically, Britain has always done best when it's been the leader in these agendas, the leader in putting forward new proposals. And I'm very confident from my conversations in the past with European leaders that they would welcome this British leadership in Europe.
Would they welcome it, though? I mean, genuine leadership, if Britain did ultimately join the euro? You're the man that helped keep the UK out of the euro.
And that was the right decision, and that shows why I don't support Europe, whether it's right or wrong. I don't support European measures just because they're European measures. I support European measures when they're right for Britain and in the national interest. And you see, you've got to get the balance right between the autonomy that we desire and the cooperation we need. We did not need to be part of the euro to be part of the European single market. We've managed to maintain the level of employment in Britain. We've managed to keep the financial services in London, even although we're not part of the euro. So it was the right decision for Britain, and it's getting this balance right between being cooperative and working with our neighbours, but at the same time making most of the decisions about taxation, social security, about defence, about energy. Most of these decisions are still made in Britain and will continue to be so. And that's why I think, as someone who didn't propose joining the euro, I'm an advocate of European cooperation because I can see where it has benefits and we should do it, but I can also see where it was not to our benefit.
Yeah. I mean, so the UK may well be able to be enthusiastic members of the European Union without joining the euro, but it certainly couldn't tinker with the free movement of peoples. And do you share and do you understand any of the concerns amongst Labour voters and so many others about the millions of EU nationals who now reside in the United Kingdom?
Well, one of the things I'll be talking about tomorrow is how we relieve the pressure on communities where there have been high levels of migration. And these communities need European Union financial support, where there's pressure on the health service, on schools, and on amenities. And I think the government and the European Union together could do more to help communities that have felt that they are under pressure with their schools and hospitals in particular. But, you know, the biggest problem that we face is illegal immigration. When we saw these boats coming into the English Channel from Albanians trying to get into Britain, victims, I think, themselves of traffickers and people smugglers, when we saw these boats come, these are illegal immigrants. And the only way to stop illegal immigration is to cooperate with your neighbours of France and the rest of Europe. So we stop people before they even get to the Channel. Now, that's why you need cooperation. And it's really interesting when you look at the polls, nearly 2/3 of people want that level of European security cooperation to stop illegal immigration, as well as, of course, to stop terrorism.
But just flesh out that point you made there, Mr. Brown. You think there could be emergency EU funding for communities that are coming under pressure from migration?
Well, when we were in government, we had a migration assistance fund for communities that were under pressure. There are some European measures that help communities under pressure. This is a problem that Europe should share together, just as we have got to share the problem of dealing with the problem of refugees coming out of Syria. And I believe that European cooperation can help here. But you see, illegal immigration is a problem that can only be dealt with in the end by cooperation. And if that is going to be the biggest problem in future years, we cannot afford to walk away from the cooperation that needs to be structured and permanent so that we can stop particularly people smugglers and particularly criminal gangs misusing and abusing the worries of people who are desperate about their future. And they are the criminal element that are using illegal immigration as a means of making money. We've got to root them out by European cooperation.
And do you think all people in the party are as enthusiastic about the European Union project as you are? Mr. Corbyn was on a popular programme on Friday night and asked on a scale of 1 to 10 how enthusiastic he was about the European Union. He gave it a 7. I think you're a 10.
Well, I've never been on that programme, and I don't quite know what kind of programme it is, and they never invited me on when I was Labour leader. So I think that's a humorous programme. I think the main point is this, that Jeremy Corbyn, John McDonnell, I talked to him only this morning actually, Tom Watson, I've been talking to him, they are determined over the next 10 days to get this positive message across. They need, of course, the media to report it, and that's important that we tell you that that's the case. But I'll be outlining a positive agenda tomorrow. I believe it will have the support of all my colleagues in the Labour Party. I also believe that European leaders would want to support it, and I hope the Conservative government will support it. You see, in the end, people are patriotic British citizens. They are proud of our country, and they're proud most of all when we lead, not standing apart, not standing alone, not standing outside and isolated, as some people would like us to do, but leading in Europe, showing that we've got the ideas and we've got the insights for the future, showing that our leadership can bring other countries on board, and showing by our leadership how we can change Europe. And of course, many of the changes is Europe adopting policies that we in Britain think are the right thing for Britain, and people then agree are the right things for Europe.
And you mentioned there your conversations with Labour figures there. Have you talked to Mr Cameron, who's been saying today, I need to take myself out of the firing line so that Labour figures and others can have their say? Is this coordinated?
Well, that's Mr. Cameron's decision about what he should do. But I think everybody recognises that there are 15 million or so non-Labour, non-Tory voters. These are people who would never vote for the Conservative Party. They won't vote for UKIP, but they voted Labour, Liberal, Green, Nationalist. And they have a voice that could be the most decisive voice in this referendum, particularly because of the divisions in the Conservative Party. But these voters that I know well in my old constituency and right around the country, they don't like the status quo. They want to see things change. They want to know how Europe will make a difference to their lives in the future. They want to know what improvements we can look forward. They're particularly worried, mothers in particular, about the fate and the fortunes of their children. Where will the jobs come from? And I think we can reassure them that in Europe there is more chance of creating the jobs of the future, particularly through the reforms into the single market, than from being outside. So the Labour voter, but particularly all non-Tory voters, I think they are very receptive to 10 days of what should be a positive message. Of course it's right to point out what's wrong and the fears and the anxieties that you must have when you're taking a leap in the dark. But of course also, I think people need to know what is going to change in their lives for the better as a result of voting to stay in Europe. And it's that Labour is saying Britain will lead in Europe in the future.
And the thought occurs, Mr. Brown, I mean, we spoke at about the same time before the vote in the Scottish referendum campaign. Do you think you're becoming to be seen as something, a bit of a saviour of campaigns that are in trouble? The polls start to go against you. Happened in Scotland, seems to be happening a little bit here to the Remain side, and they go, wheel out Gordon Brown.
No, I don't think so. I'm too old to be the comeback kid, and I'm not going to be that. But I do want a positive message. It was true also, by the way, in the Scottish referendum, that people wanted to know the positive benefits of being part of the union. And they needed to know also what would go wrong if we left it, but they wanted to know what are the positive benefits. And I think particularly I'm talking to non-Conservative voters, because they don't like much of the status quo and they want to know how things are going to change for the better. And I think that was true in the Scottish referendum. It's true in this referendum that while it's right to point out all the things that could go wrong, it's also necessary to point out the benefits. Now, I will be setting this out in detail tomorrow with some proposals, which I hope people will be interested in. But I think the more interesting thing that I think the media and the public will want to know is that Labour is united in this message, and indeed we are.
And do you think there is a Scottish dimension to all this if that scenario that the UK overall votes to leave, Scotland votes to remain, that it makes a second Scottish independence referendum more likely?
Well, clearly there are some people who would like to exploit a difference in voting patterns between Scotland and England to suggest that Scotland should again have a vote on independence. My own view is that if the arguments are put again, and if we do it in a positive way about the benefits of being part of the Union, and of course point out that the economic situation of Scotland has changed since the last referendum 2 years ago. My view is that Scottish people would still vote to be part of the Union, but of course we'd have to persuade them to do so. But I think that is an unlikely prospect, and a referendum, I think, is an unlikely prospect in the near future. Well,
there's also talk, Mr. Brown, isn't there? They're also thinking about a second referendum on the EU if the vote is to leave and it's close, because there are so many different kinds of relationship that an independent United Kingdom could have with the European Union.
Yeah, but I've looked at all these, and I've published a book called Britain Leading, Not Leaving. It's a paperback, and it's available. And I've gone through what would it be like if we followed the course of Norway, or followed the course of Switzerland, or followed what some people call is the sort of open.
Well, there we are. Unfortunately, just towards the end of the interview, as you noticed there, former Prime Minister Gordon Brown saying he'd be making a major speech on the positive reasons for staying within the European Union, he believes, tomorrow. That's, as I say, Gordon Brown speaking to me from North Queensferry.